All right, guys. So a pair of lawsuits now in connection with the COVID vaccine, in particular, this time, the Pfizer one. One is at our evil top hat neighbor, Canada. That was Michael Knowles' description. That makes me laugh. And one is right here in the United States. Okay, the first one, God bless this poor dad. An Ontario man files a $35 million lawsuit against Pfizer over his son's vaccine death. This is New Tecumseh, Ontario. The dad's name is Dan Hartman, has initiated a wrongful death lawsuit, wrongful death, against Pfizer because his son Sean died from the COVID vaccine. There is an American pathologist named Dr. Ryan Cole who has determined, as of this past summer, indeed, that is what caused the son's death. They went to the Vaccine Injury Support Program in March. He was denied money, this father was. His son died 33 days after receiving the Pfizer second vaccination. His poor son, Sean, was found deceased in his bedroom by his mother. They said that he had problems after the first shot, and then came the second shot, and 33 days later, he died. Now, in the United States, there's a similar case, but a different defendant. He's suing Pfizer, this Ontario dad. But here in the U.S., there's a lawsuit against the Department of Defense for its relationship to this vaccine and pushing it through. The family of 24-year-old George Watts of Lockwood, New York, has filed a lawsuit accusing the Department of Defense of willful misconduct in the death of their son by deceiving millions of Americans into taking the COVID vaccines, which they say were unsafe. After taking 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, he died. And after the first dose, he experienced complications, which he chose to keep to himself. After the second dose in mid-September, he experienced flu-like symptoms and so on, and shortly thereafter died. He began coughing up blood. He had pain in his feet and his hands and his teeth, extremely sensitive to sunlight. And by October 27th, 2021, he was dead. Absolutely awful stories. So what do you guys make of it? Because as you know, they're supposed to have immunity. Pfizer is supposed to have immunity. The federal government's supposed to have immunity from lawsuits like this. So how do these parents get to bring these claims? Who wants to start?
I'll start. Can I start?
Yeah.
So, okay. So a couple of things. First, that people need to understand is that what our government did when they rolled out these vaccines, they had to bake into the cake immunity against the vaccine manufacturers, or else nobody was going to manufacture these vaccines. Everybody knew from the get-go that they were going to get sued. People were going to die. Things were going to happen. So you have to bake that into the cake. And just like they did with the nursing home cases, they granted nursing homes during COVID immunity from civil lawsuits for a period of time. And typically when that happens, the government plans to roll out some sort of fund to help compensate the people who are damaged by whatever conduct the government has created. Now, it sounds like they're trying to do that in the COVID cases, but some families are saying that's not good enough. And in order to get around the governmental immunity, which governments have against their negligent acts by and large, and the federal government has that too with the Federal Tort Claims Act, you can't get around immunity, or a plaintiff can get around that provision if they can prove that the government's conduct was reckless, that it violated your civil rights, and that it wasn't a matter of mere negligence. And so these cases are saying, look, it was reckless. It violated our civil rights because we have a right to life, liberty, and happiness. And well, if you're dead, your civil rights have been violated. And you did so recklessly for whatever your agenda was to roll out these vaccines without the proper protocol or what have you. It's a good avenue, Megyn. I know it sounds like it's going to be a long shot, but it is a good avenue to get around the government claims of immunity, and it just might work. And if it does work, it could be big. It'll be a large class action. That's my prediction. Yeah. And perhaps that's the right way to go.
Arthur, let me just clarify, because I made a mistake in describing the cases. The first boy, the one in Ontario, he died after the first shot. It was the second young man out of New York, Lockwood, New York, who had some symptoms after shot number 1, but that he kept to himself, as says the lawsuit, including blood in his urine. And then went on to get the second shot anyway and died thereafter. So just to clarify, one died after the first shot, one died after the second. Go ahead.
So if I could be pragmatic for a second, if I was the dad of either of these tragic deaths, I would just go to Pfizer privately and say, hey, how do you feel about setting up a foundation in the name of my son, knowing that three people, there's some fund of people, a vaccination fund, and all three of them together have gotten a total of $5,000. One got 1,000, one got 2,000, one got 1,000. So I don't think there's really a lot of good law on this for these plaintiffs, especially since, yes, I understand these two boys died tragically, and how many millions and millions and millions of Americans had no reaction, if any. So I don't see them, and God forbid this happens again, and some sort of a pandemic. Do we really want to set precedent to the manufacturers of the drug, saying, yeah, we know at the time when we really needed you, we said you were going to have immunity. 3 years later, we changed our mind and you don't. And now anyone who had any kind of reaction to the COVID vaccine is going to be able to sue you. You can't have that precedent. You have to
go ahead, Jonna.
The manufacturers.
Here's how clever the government is, though, Arthur. They grant immunity to the drug companies for a period of time so that the statute of limitations will have run for any wrongful death claims by the time they lift that immunity. So the government looks like we're lifting the immunity, great. But the people who actually need to sue the companies for wrongful death will have surpassed their statute of limitations. So it's a win-win for the government and for the drug companies and not for the people, which is why they have to sue the federal government under a civil rights violation. And that's how I think they can get in under the wire and get some sort of actual relief that these families obviously deserve.
But can't you get, but the standard right now, even if we don't change anything, the standard right now is if you can prove willful misconduct, you can get after them. You can get them. Willful misconduct. So what they're alleging, like in the first case out of Ontario, they're alleging that Pfizer owed a duty of care to Sean Hartman, the young boy, to accurately inform him of all the risks associated with this vaccine. And that, hold on, let me get to it. They provided an incorrect characterization of the efficacy data, discontinued results of adverse events on vaccinated people in the study, and on from there. That's true. We've had people on this show talk about firsthand person accounts of how their loved one participated in the Pfizer study only to get severely vaccine injured and then dumped from the study, Jonna, which is not ethical. We've taken testimonials right here on this show about that. If they can get there, and they're going to be able to get their hands on people like that, to say it was willful. This was a willful attempt to mislead by companies like Pfizer and Moderna. You know why? Because it was worth billions to them. Right.
And there's your exception to the governmental immunity. Boom. That's a home run right there. And I think that's going to be very provable. And the government's going to have to step up and do the right thing. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, guys. Remember, you were forced to get vaccinated depending on where you work. You couldn't go to a restaurant in New York City without showing your vaccine you couldn't do anything without showing your vaccine card. That's force. And to do that without the proper testing or lying to us about the results, which I'm positive the government did, is just flat out wrong. And now it's time to pay the piper. And I feel very sorry for these families who lost children. It's bad enough we have plenty of families who lost elderly people. No death is okay. But the people who especially lost otherwise healthy children, it's not acceptable. And there is a way.
But it really wasn't force. In other words, in the lawsuit, they say, one kid wanted to play hockey. That's why he got the vaccine. And another kid had the option of going to school online, but he didn't want to. So he got the shot so he could go in person. That's not a legal definition of force. And you know what, John? We're being lawyers now. We're not being like what it should be. We're talking about a Supreme Court of the United States looking at the law, being a strict constructionalist like Amy Coney Barrett is, the way she was taught by Justice Scalia. Nobody was forced to get the shot. There were some circumstances, like in the city, you were going to lose your job. But these particular cases, to go play hockey, or all our kids did online learning.
Live your life.
So they were not forced. You can't use the word forced. They were not forced to.
Go ahead, Jonna.
Well, I think we probably will redefine force then, because otherwise, if we had listened to the government and didn't want to get vaccinated, then you were going to be shut in your house with scare tactics daily.
Plenty of people were, Jonna. Plenty of people.
No, it was a massive scare campaign.
You're going to die, but you were going to kill other people if you didn't get the vaccine. I mean, come on, that was manipulative.
No, because that's the thing, Arthur. She has a point. Because are we really going to be at the point where unless you had a gun to your head and you were told get this vaccine or you get the bullet, it doesn't count as force? Because it was you're losing your jobs. People were fired from the military. They were fired from teaching jobs. They were fired from hospital jobs. They couldn't play sports. They couldn't go to school if they refused to get the vaccine. They're at our own school. It's been great on the woke stuff, but not so great on the COVID stuff. These kids were going to be expelled unless they got that shot at age 16. Thankfully, our kids were younger, so they didn't have to face that yet. But that is a form of force that was exerted. Okay. And it's not just going to be these two plaintiffs who suffered negative consequences.
Okay, expelled is a lot different than I can't play hockey, right? I mean, getting expelled from school.
Okay, but I'm expanding it.
Okay, the bottom line is there's got to be precedent on this, right? Kids all have to get vaccinated to go to school, at least here in New York. You know, my daughter, who's 2, she's getting a shot every 6 months of something. So there's got to be some legal precedent on how these cases have played out through the years that we can rely on. I just don't see that the government here is going to say, let manufacturers of a drug that save people's lives, let's have them now be liable when we told them you weren't going to be liable, because the next time this
we told them they wouldn't be liable for negligence. We didn't tell them that they would not be liable for willful misconduct. And by the way, if they had tried to say that, it would not be upheld by a court. You can't immunize Pfizer or Moderna for willful malfeasance behind the scenes, for knowingly endangering people, which is what is being alleged. Some people take CBD for better sleep or less stress and more calm. Some take it for pain relief, better energy, or better focus and concentration. Today, I want to tell you about CB Distillery and their over 2 million satisfied customers. According to a poll of their customers, 90% reported they sleep better with CBD. 81% said CBD helps with stress, and 80% said CBD helps with aches and pain after physical activity. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep, if you're dealing with too much stress and could use a little calm in your life, if you suffer from pain and discomfort, especially after physical exercise, you could give CBD a try from cbdistillery.com. Use my 20% discount by visiting cbdistillery.com. Enter my initials MK to get your discount. No prescription required. That's cbdistillery.com. Promo code MK for 20% off. cbdistillery.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.